Welcome back to the RRI podcast, episode number 7. I'm Brad.
And I'm Jace.
Thank you for coming back to listen to us. Tonight we want to talk about, it's a pretty quick topic, but it's very important. It's called Why We Do What We Do. So in this episode, we're going to break down some of the hard truths about why those in public safety do what they do. Why are you here? This episode will be a bit shorter, but don't let the duration take away from the content. So Jace, when we talk about why we do what we do, what first crosses your mind? It's not a new or foreign question to any of us in public safety, right? But
Right.
what is your automatic response to the question, why do you work in emergency communications, dispatch, 911?
I'm sure my answer is going to be almost spot on with everyone else's answer, but it's to help people. Right? I feel like that's going to be everybody's pretty much number one answer is to help people. You want to serve your community. You want to have a purpose in life, and it's to serve. And that's what it is for me, and I'm sure others as well.
So that's a very good point that you bring it up, is that that's what the answer really should be, right? That's why we all started in public safety, at least. But over the years, you start to lose the focus on why you're actually doing it, and you start doing it because it's all you know how to do. It becomes, again, your identity, your personality, and you're doing it because you've been a cop for 15 years and now you can't go do anything else.
Well, right. Yeah.
So I think that answer is the pure answer of why most people, I'd say a majority of people, get into the public safety field, because they want to help. They want to give back to their communities or their state or their county or whatever.
Yeah.
So the other questions that go hand in hand with this is, what made you want to be a dispatcher? What keeps you as a dispatcher? What is it fun to be a dispatcher? All these questions pile on, and you could probably sit here and answer each one of those without a problem.
Of course.
The concern that I have is when you get to the point where you can no longer answer those without really having to think about it, I think is where we start to break that mold, if you will, why we started this.
Yeah, and I think the question you posed at the very beginning, why do we do what we do? I think it goes past even just the job. Well, I mean, the job is the key component here, but even little things like, why do we talked about this last week, but why do we protect our family from the things that we see and hear? Why do we go sit at restaurants and refuse to have our backs to the door? Why do we insert whatever there? So it's kind of a multitude of things that this topic can cover, and all great points so far.
Yeah, so in the question, why do you do what you do? I think I'll just touch back on it. If you're still, say you're 10, 15, 20 years into your career and you're still saying, because I want to help people, good for you. Kudos to you. You haven't lost focus on why you got into it in the first place. So I think the problem truly becomes, this also becomes a generic answer because we don't know what else to say, right? We get lost in that moment where, what do they want me to say? What should I say? What am I allowed to say? Oh, it's because I wanted to help people, right? So at some point in your career, that's your genuine, true answer. And at a later date in your career, if you couldn't really hang on to that feeling, it just becomes the answer because it's easy to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great point. And we had recently, you and I attended a community event, and we were talking to some sixth graders about our career, and we were also with a police officer as well, and trying to explain to even sixth graders, why we do what we do. It's at this point in my career, I can't say it's the easiest thing right now. We've had some hard couple of years in dispatch, in public safety, in the field, and with everything happening in the world, and it's kind of put a harsh reality on what the job actually is. So sitting down with those kids was a little bit eye-opening for me, especially this topic. It's like, why do we do what we do day in, day out? we immerse ourselves in everything to do with what we do. You know, we're taking overtime nonstop. We're going to trainings. We are, you know, taking phone calls late at night, work related. We're texting, you know, emails, checking our phones for emails from work. Um, why do we do all that? Is it for the passion? Is it for the job? Is everybody like that? Are all fields like that?
Yeah, and I think it does bring up a good point. But does how invested are you in your agency? It's not even really a fair question, right? You go to work every day. I think it's fair enough to say you're invested. I
Of
don't
course.
think it's having that disconnect when you go home, like we've talked about before too, and you're knowing your identity when you walk through the door at home, when you become the spouse, the parent, the friend, the son, the daughter. I think having that disconnect is very important. But especially the newer folks in the career, they become so excited about the why I am here. What do I get to experience next, or what am I missing if I don't pick up my phone, or am I going to miss out on that overtime opportunity? The reasoning for why you're there starts to slowly fade from wanting to help people to wanting to make more money, or wanting a promotion, or wanting to be running off adrenaline for 12 hours. You know there's a lot of pieces
Yeah,
that.
that's a really good point.
Yeah.
I think you bring up a really good point, especially like the not wanting to miss anything. I see that in a lot of dispatchers, especially even police officers. You know, they don't want to miss that call. That you know, and I think it's just in our nature. It's in the nature of the job. Of course, it goes along with wanting to help people, but it also has to be with wanting to know. There's a certain element in dispatch where you don't know the outcome. You hear the whole beginning and until responders get there, and then what happens after that? Unless you have a connection into that scene, you don't know. So I think that also kind of drives it. That curiosity, that wondering what happened next, which drives us to also continue to do what we do. Pushes you onto that next call,
Right.
pushes you into that next overtime shift.
Yep. And let's talk about the firefighters for a second. The volunteers and or the full time firefighters. You're sitting around dormant waiting for a tone to go off so you can run code 3 somewhere.
Oh yeah.
Talk about an adrenaline rush to wait for a call, and to hear that coming across the speaker from dispatch. You could be coming from a dead sleep to go to one of those calls. How
Mm-hmm.
unhealthy is that? But we do it, and they do it, and they do a great job at it. But perhaps that's their answer why they do what they do. The adrenaline rush. Maybe later in the career.
Yeah.
I think initially, again, it was the excitement of being a firefighter, the big trucks, the wanting to help people. There's a combination of things, but eventually, your body starts to thrive off adrenaline, and you look for that
Yeah.
rush each time.
Of course, there has to be some type of element in that, right? With adrenaline, and yeah, it's a good point about the firefighters and the on-call personnel. You know, they're leaving, like you said, in the middle of the night. Sometimes they're leaving during family functions, all hours of the day, all hours of the night, just to go to that call for service. It could be something little too. They could go to a medical call in the middle of the night that's just a lift assist. They didn't have to go. They're a volunteer, but they did. What drives them to do that?
Well, I can tell you that waking up to that pager at 3 a.m. is probably worse for you than midday,
Oh,
because
of course,
you're
yeah.
coming from that REM sleep, or that really important sleep throughout the night, and you're waking up to that tone to go help somebody. Which, again, kudos to all you. Thank you for doing what you do, but that's eventually that's going to take a toll on your body.
Yeah, and your mental health as well. Like you said with the adrenaline thing, I'd be curious to see some numbers if because there is some type of adrenaline that goes through you when you are going, code 3, light sirens, fast. Um, does your body take a toll from that constant rush, or does it adapt over time once you get kind of used to it? Does it come in smaller doses? You know what I mean? I'd be curious to see if they have any type of stats about that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Over time, I think you learn how to control it a little better. Like you're not going to trip and fall every time you run out the door. You're going to start to get your feet under you a little better, but you're still going to have the same dosage. But yeah, I mean, looking that up would be good for us to understand. But either way, adrenaline's adrenaline. It's pushing you, and it's you're putting something. Granted, it's naturally occurring, but you're putting something into your system over and over and over again throughout a 24-hour period when you're
Yeah.
supposed to be doing things to take care of yourself.
Right. Even with dispatch, I mean, I remember I'm not sure if you remember, but I remember the first time I ever had to answer a 911 call. My body was shaking. It's so nerve-wracking. Or the first time you're, going code 3 in a police car or an ambulance or a fire truck, that first time for sure probably tops it all. But then there's also calls too that can bring you right back to that very first time. The for me it's those CPR calls. The tone in someone's voice sends me right back to that place, sends me right back to that. But you're right, the difference is I do now know how to handle that. I now know how to handle that anxiety, that adrenaline, and it pushes me through. I have the tools that I need to make it through that call.
Yeah. Now, I want to take a minute to touch on something, and I won't get too personal or too specific. Just to respect our jobs. But you've taken many calls in your career that were, where you ended up helping someone do CPR, right, on a spouse or a friend, and you know that they didn't
Yeah.
make it, right?
Right. Yeah.
So recently, I think you did have a call recently where CPR was successful. With the help of you and the ambulance showing up and the first responders. Um,
Yeah.
you know, you were potentially in your mind expecting the worst, but
Yeah.
part of the outcome, which you didn't find out till later, was better than you had imagined, right? So,
Yeah.
does that take you back to that feeling of why you're doing what you're doing?
Yeah. Every time. You know this. I was super excited about that call. That sounds weird to say, but it kind of like Mark's story when his favorite call was a CPR call too. Especially in dispatch, I was sitting on the other end. You can listen to these calls all day long. Your caller's telling you something. He could be doing the exact opposite of what you're telling him or what he's saying he's doing. So, but you have to have faith and that call I did. Him and I worked as a team through the phone together, and it sounded like he was doing good CPR, and it worked well enough to keep her going, which was great. So yeah, but it did that feeling was brought right back for sure, which is pretty incredible. But it's
Yeah,
why I do it, like you said. The
right.
point in case why we do it. The I wish the good outweighed the bad more than it does. I think everybody can probably agree with that statement, right? How do you feel the same? Like the bad calls get talked about way more often than the good calls,
Yeah,
and weigh
inherently,
on you
we're
more.
we're in a position where we're not there to be, on people's best days. We've said that before 100 times, but I think, we're fully aware of it. The cops are fully aware of it, that you're dealing with someone in the worst moment of their life. Maybe it's a repeat offender, and that's a different case. But you
Of
might
course.
find this one person who has no criminal history whatsoever, and you're dealing with them, and they're just losing their mind, right? So you're, you know, you are their resource for the day, their resource for that 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour, however long you spend with them. And I think it's important to remember that everything that we're doing is for the greater good, but it's typically having to deal with the worst of the worst at times to get there.
Yeah.
We've on the phone, we've dealt with people in mental health crises, and that doesn't make them a bad person. That means they're having a bad moment, and they've called the right place. And
Yeah.
we send the police, we send the fire, we send the EMS, and they're now dealing with that same problem. So you might have just been at the police station eating lunch with your partner, and now you've got to go deal with someone who's out of control, swearing at you, kicking at you, swinging at you.
Yeah.
But at the end of the night, if you get them detained, secured, and transported to where they need to be, to where they're safe, that should bring you back to the
Success.
why you do what you do.
Yeah.
Each time you have a successful call should re-enhance that why.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's across the board with all first responder agencies, the police, fire, medical, 911, nurses, whatever, tow truck drivers. I don't care. Whoever you want to include in that, I think that goes across the board.
Right. So, and I think that's why we talk about, this topic, because, why are we so willing to help others, even at times where we have yet to help ourselves? Right. We've talked about this in the past few podcasts for different reasons, but why? Why would we do that? Why would we pour into someone else's cup from an empty cup? You can't, but we are. Cops, firefighters, EMS, dispatchers, everyone's doing it on a daily basis. Why do we do that?
It's funny you mentioned that. When we brought up this topic at first, that was kind of one of my first thoughts as well. Why do we put on that tough shell, that tough exterior, even though most of us are hurting inside and dealing with so much more than anybody could even imagine? Again, I think it goes back to the protective nature of first responders. We want to protect the people that we love above everything, and that includes from the things that are hurting us inside. We don't want them to feel any type of way that we feel, because we know how bad it hurts. We know how much it sucks, how it can be a rabbit hole for some. And I think, again, it's just in our nature to want to protect, to want to serve through thick and thin. When you do an oath to get into be a police officer or sheriff, what have you, you do the oath of office, right? And I think that's kind of a testament almost to a marriage, till death do you part. It's kind of exactly what it is. You're signing yourself up to serve and protect no matter what, and that's on or off duty. I think everyone assumes it's both on and off duty.
Yeah, and I think that's the old, there's an old timer mentality there. Like, when you were a cop, you're a cop. You never, just like when you're a soldier, right? And that's noble, but
right.
You need to be human. You need to be yourself. You need to be that mom, dad, brother, sister. We could, and one of the things that I think is really important, and it's something that it's a rhetorical question, but I want you to sit down at some point and ask yourself, like, why do you give so much to a career, a job, a career path, a passion that's already taken so much from you, right? So, and I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm not saying that they're sucking the life out of you. We're talking about the why here, right? Why? So why are you giving so much of your time and your personality and your dedication to a career path that is just there, right? It's not, if it gives you fulfillment, then there's a good answer, right? But if it's not giving you fulfillment, then you're not, right. It's almost like, a Yankee swap at Christmas. You give your person their gift and they give you a gift back, but it's an empty box, right? Yeah. You've just put all this time into thinking, what would this person want? And you get nothing in return.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And a lot of us would be fine with it if it made someone else we love happy, right? Which I think is going to be kind of the answer that you're not looking for, but that would be my answer. Right?
Yeah.
Do it to help. Of course, we don't go into this career to make money. I think we've talked about that before. None of us are millionaires here. The hours suck. The benefits are really not that great. Get treated like crap constantly on the phone. Officers, EMS, firefighters in person. We deal with a lot. Terrible sleep habits, terrible eating habits, terrible marriages sometimes. The marriages take a hit, right? What's the stat you have about marriage? 50% of first responder marriages.
That's actually 50%
something
is
like that.
The normal everyday human, not even bringing encompassing the first responder field.
Right. So there you go. So it just kind of puts it all into perspective for you. Like, why? Like you said, why? Why are we doing this? But I I can't see myself doing anything else, which is what you said earlier. Can you? I can't see myself doing anything else. Where I can go bag groceries again, but
So, but here's
you won't get that fulfillment.
no, but here's the thing. It's not wrong to say you do this because you can't do anything else. As long as you still have a passion driving you to do
Of
the
course,
right thing and for good people and for the right people. You're not if if after 20 years you can't think of doing anything but being a cop, that's awesome. I mean, it can be awesome as long as it's for the right purpose.
right?
Like, well, I'm useless now. I'm just going to be a cop the rest of my career. Well, if that's the mentality, then there's a problem, and that's what we're trying to talk about here. Is why do you
Yeah,
do this? So, and I want to just take a second to say that I'm not trying to take away from the nobility of anyone's career. I think that the choice that you made and however long ago you made it, it's okay to fully embrace and love your career path. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Some people went to college for it, some didn't. Some promoted quicker than others. Some are still not still just patrol officers, but they're not. They don't want to promote, right? They want to run their beats, or they just want to patrol around town.
that's what makes
But
them happy.
but love it for the right reasons, and while also giving yourself, your family, and your friends the time and the love that they are requiring from you. But don't forget about yourself. Like the most important part of that sentence is yourself.
Yeah, that's a really. I love that.
And
I like that a
making
lot.
yourself the why is going to put a lot into perspective for you.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
I think it goes without saying that your area, your community, this world needs first responders. It needs you to keep doing what you're doing, right? But I think we need not forget that you need some things as well. Evaluate your current mindset. Take some time to find yourself in a position of doing what you're doing for the right passion and purpose. And again, love your job, but remember why you started doing it in the first place. Right? Still remember your why is all you have. Right? In this throughout this short duration of our conversation, we've said why about 100 times. Why?
Yeah.
Why? We sound like we're 5 year olds. Why? Why? And it's funny because I'm thinking of my youngest son. He'll say why, why. The genuine curiosity coming out of his mouth when he asks that question, he wants to truly know why,
Yeah.
right? And the power in just those three letters, why, is huge if you really think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like the one we talked about last week, the big old NO. So powerful. That's a really good point, especially about your youngest. Asking the why. I'd be curious to hear what your partners your think or your family members, your brothers, sisters, friends. Why do you think I started this job? I would like to hear other people's perspective of why we do it too. Maybe they have a different perspective that could shed some light and make you feel more accomplished or better about what you've done thus far. We're obviously very hard on ourselves too, which takes a toll in the filling of the cup. But yeah, to reach out to your folks and why do you think I started this? So for some, it's started at a young age. I can say that for myself. I grew up in the field. I my grandfather. I was immersed in that field in that culture, and I was obsessed with it. And that history was over then. So
Yeah, and I think just we could beat this to a pulp, but if you can answer your own question as to why am I still doing this, or why do I want to do this, or why do I need to stop doing this, or why is my home life going into shambles, or why is everyone always pissed off at me, or why you can ask why all day long, but you can wrap it around yourself. If you can answer those questions are pretty easy to answer if you give yourself some time to think about it.
yeah.
So
And
just
again, it's not a bad thing. It's not to down any of these careers. It's not to show yourself that you shouldn't be in this career. This is not our MO at all for this topic. This is more or less just trying to show you your worth bring you back to that first call you ran, that first call you took, that first fire you put out, to bring you back to that moment of clarity of this is why I do it, because we don't get that enough. That's why we always like to tell people to ask about the best call a first responder's taken, not their worst. You can ask that best call. It's changing that mindset. It's helping that responder realize their worth. I think that's the big message here. The why.
You're right. And then to add on to that, what's the best call you've ever gone on? And they'll tell you, and then you say, why? So, right, you can even add that on to the tail end of that. But
yeah,
but just,
that's perfect.
I guess on a final note, just be sure that your why, you're balancing it on the personal side as much as you're balancing it on the professional side. Why is just as important. It's more important on the personal side. However, I just put it on a scale and let the scales tip how they may, but you're the only one who really has the answers.
Of course.
So I think there'll be some, we'll pose, actually, after you've listened to this, all the listeners, we'd appreciate it if you'd find our post on Facebook and come comment, tell us what your why is, or feel free to ask some clarifying questions, or comment what you thought about all this. What's your take on it?
That'd be great.
Anyways, this has been a good, very quick, fairly quick episode, but we want to stress the importance of why we did it. There it is again, the why.
I see what you did there.
But we want to thank you for listening. Thank you for coming back, and we look forward to the next one. And we just appreciate all the support and all the listeners. Really sit down. If you have anything to do this week, or whether you have anything to do or nothing to do, sit down and think about your why. So until that time, we love you, we appreciate you, and we ask you to stay
resilient.